welcome to Primordial Threads.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Hannah,
I'm Anna,
and
and
we're here today. We're here
yes,
to get into the next installment of our What Do the Planets Even Do series.
we're talking about Mercury today.
Yes, we
So,
are. It is Sunday, October 23rd.
mhm.
I've got an Aquarius rising over there with Saturn on the ascendant.
I have Pluto on the ascendant in Capricorn, so who knows what's going to come up today?
I think it's kind of a cool, I like having Pluto there, especially thinking about Mercury as it's with the psychopomp
Oh yeah. Do you
traits.
do you want to give a definition of psychopomp? Because I just learned what it means like last week.
Yeah, sure. It's basically the figure that ushers folks to the underworld. It's kind of like a guide, which these are all really great. We're going to be talking today about what Mercury even does. So this is a kind of, we're diving right on in here. But one of the things Mercury does is guides, is leads, is transitions. It's the ruler of Mercury, and it's the ruler of Mercury. It's the ruler of Virgo and Gemini, both mutable signs. So it does have those qualities of like transition, flow, moving, and so helping souls and its psychopomp kind of facade is not the right word, but energy, I guess.
Mhm.
um Helping souls transition from living to not living, or here to there, is kind of one of its significations. So I thought it was kind of cool. We had like intense malefics on the ascendants, and we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's get deep. Let's dive below the surface of
Mhm.
traditional Mercury significations here.
Yeah, Mercury also finds its joy in the first house because of that transitionary period, because
Mm.
Mercury likes to be in that liminal space where it is kind of going in between two phases.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
yeah.
that was a great way to say it. The liminal spaces between two phases. That's definitely very Mercury. So yeah, things that Mercury does, we've already kind of talked about. Transitioning. There's a lot of that liminal space action. Um, Mercury is always, it's never more than what, one sign away from the sun.
Mhm. I think like in very rare cases, if the sun is in late degree or really early degree, it can be like very early degree of
Mm-hmm.
the two signs away, but that's like very rare
Yeah,
that
so
it
it's
happens.
typically like 30-ish degrees, no more than
Yeah, it's
like
no more than
32,
30.
33, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so keeping close to the sun, helping out with that transition, and it retrogrades and uh like does the Kazemi action way more than any other
Hmm.
planet. So kind of having that constant switching back and forth between morning star, evening star, similar to Venus. Venus does the same thing, but at a much less frequency. We just had our Venus Kazemi yesterday.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It
So
was
we're still,
good.
yeah, I enjoyed the Kazemi. I thought it was
Yes.
great.
It was like
Lots
a
of
nice
fun.
respite from all of the shitty astrology that's been going on lately. I was like, oh my God, okay, there are good things in the world.
Like a little bright spot before we head into these eclipses.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we'll see. But yeah, no, the sun and Venus moved from 29 degrees of Libra into Scorpio this morning. Um, and that kind of transition, Venus just became an evening star. Am I correct? I think it
I think
did.
so, yeah. Because
Yes, it
I've
did.
been,
Because I used that
yeah,
as this is my evening star era.
yes. And when we've been going to the gym at night, I see Jupiter and then I see Venus. And
You can see Venus?
yeah,
Oh, that's
one
so
night I was
cool.
able to. But
You'd have to catch it at the
Jupiter
right
has
time.
been bright and
Right
shiny.
there.
It
Yeah,
just,
every time I
yeah.
really enjoyed looking up and seeing Jupiter recently and just being like, that's Jupiter. Everyone's mind gets completely blown. I'm like, that's a planet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. And everybody's like, "Oh, I thought it was a star." And I'm like, "Nope."
Mm-mm.
I
Yep.
tell Lane, I'm like, "That's Jupe."
There's Jupe. He's looking down.
Yeah,
He's Jupe.
basically.
Yeah. Speaking of Jupiter, that's kind of a good transition because we were talking earlier about another thing Mercury does is learning and connecting.
Yes.
Where
Mhm.
Jupiter's kind of more of, and this gives me like three house, ninth house
Yeah.
vibes, where Jupiter is the sage, the learner, the dispeller of knowledge,
Mhm. The expert.
the expert, yes, the all-knowing.
Hmm.
Whereas Mercury is more of a seeking out, curiosity, learning, growing,
Mhm.
gathering. Kind of gives me moon vibes with like the gathering thing, but
Mhm.
it's Mercury doesn't gather things just to have them. It gathers them to connect them and to
Mhm.
find like
Purpose.
yeah, purpose exactly and
Mhm.
meaning.
Yeah, I agree. And like you think about Hermes and how like the messenger god, right? Like he was
Mm-hmm.
there to be able to give messages between the different planets,
Mm-hmm.
which just a sidebar, that's another thing like with Mercury in the charts, where
Yes.
Mercury isn't a benefic nor a malefic. It is said to bring the qualities of whatever it's talking to and an aspect to. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a Mercury that's an aspect to Jupiter, then it would kind of act like a benefic. But if it's an aspect to Saturn or Mars, then it might kind of act like a malefic. And Venus
Mm-hmm.
is also in there too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like what you said about with the connections that they have with other planets, because I do think that's a and you said something about messages too. That's such a
Mhm.
big Mercury thing. Like it's
Yes.
communication.
Mhm.
Though your learning style, your communication style, the way you process thoughts, the thought processes that you
Mhm.
find yourself kind of having over and over again or getting
Yes.
lost in or caught up in. The way
Yeah.
you communicate those thoughts to other people.
Mhm.
I think Gemini is a really good example of that quality of Mercury. Like running around and getting all of the gossip, for lack of a better word, right now, and like
Yeah.
learning and connecting and being like, oh, so and so said this, well then that makes sense because just very quick, like a circuit board. Like that gives me Gemini gives me circuit board energy.
Yeah, no, it does. And Mercury adds movement wherever it is.
Mm,
And like whatever house it's in your chart, that adds movement to it, where it's going to be
yeah.
sped up a little bit. So that
Mm-hmm.
also feels very Gemini in a way, which I know it's
Mm-hmm.
Virgo too, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
Gemini feels swifter to me.
that makes total sense because Gemini is the air sign. It's the
Hmm.
air energy of Mercury that I feel like we all probably more frequently would consider, like would
Hmm.
frequently would align with mercurial things, is like that quickness, swiftness, air energy,
Yeah.
which is why I think looking at Virgo is so interesting because it is that earth sign. It's this kind of more, we were talking earlier about like transitions and everything. So I think Virgo, I think about the like plowing of the earth and like the
Mhm.
preparing and like the gathering the things you need in order to
It's
get
tangible.
things going. Yeah, exactly. And also like the transition between life and death, like
Yeah.
like you dig a grave, you have to move the earth
Hmm.
in order to lay, to make that transition.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
not just
kind
your
of
spirit moving too, it's your body going through
there's
transition as
physical
well.
process. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. um and speaking of the physical, that kind of brings me to the idea of another thing Mercury does is like we've been talking about moving and sharing ideas and communicating. That kind of brings us into like trade as well
Hmm.
and commerce.
Yes. Yes. And like the children of Mercury are craftspeople. They
Yeah.
are, the stock market is so mercurial. Like, holy shit.
Just constant
Yeah.
change, growth, move, ups, downs. Yep.
Mhm.
Unpredictable, kind of.
Yeah. And there is kind of an unpredictable quality to Mercury in a way. And
Mercury's
you
the
think,
trickster.
yeah, and you think about like the element of Mercury, right? Like it's
Mm.
so freaking weird. Like its qualities are just
What do you?
awful.
I am not a science gal. So,
Sorry.
Miss Science Gal, why is Mercury weird as an element?
Okay, so mercury is liquid, but it is also a metal. So a lot of times like we think about metals as being solid, but it's in that
Mm-hmm.
other state, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like really floaty. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures or videos of it, but like it just looks really freaking cool. And I think it's one of those where it's like, oh my God, I want to touch it so freaking bad, but then also it will like kill you and make you go crazy.
Oh, like those
So
little poison dart frogs. That's how I feel
yeah.
about those.
And that feels so mercurial to me, where it's like, I
Yes,
will entice you to want to mess with me so bad. But then when you do, here's the trickster aspect. And haha,
exactly.
now
Yeah,
you're
no,
going through
that.
complete mental collapse.
Okay, well, you have Mercury in the 12th house, so
Fair. Maybe for me, it's a complete mental collapse.
Whereas for me, to be honest, like Mercury is conjunct my Venus. So, and Venus is my chart ruler. So Mercury, like I do write, I do like flowery language, all of that stuff. That's one way that you can kind of look to see what Mercury is doing in your chart. Like the
Yeah.
where it's placed house wise is kind of where it's, you said it's going to bring movement to that, a little bit
Hmm.
more action. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes it might be something where it's like you get tripped up, where it's a little tricky, but it's a area where you do move a little quickly and you can deal with
Hmm.
those change ups um, with a little bit
Yeah.
more flexibility. Mercury, I feel like, is a very flexible energy.
Yes. Well,
Um,
yeah, it's like mutable. It's
yeah,
mutable TM. It's
yeah,
also, I'm sorry,
no, do
quick
it.
side note. It's the only planet whose two ruling signs are square each other. Every other one is in conjunct. And I think that's
Really?
so cool and so counter to, or wait, I guess,
Jupiter is
yeah,
too, though. And I
Jupiter
was,
square. Oh, sorry.
no, no, no. That's good that you said that though, because I was thinking about the relationship between Jupiter and Mercury because we kind of opened with that.
Yeah.
But like they both, those are the only two planets that rule the mutable signs.
Hmm.
And you're
And
right,
yep.
like they
And they
are
would be
like the
square each other.
squares.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
which
it,
is so
yeah.
interesting because then that highlights that the opposition, like
Hmm.
you're always with a mutable opposition going to have one Jupiter ruled and one Mercury ruled.
Yep. And then it brings like that connection between like the sage or the teacher and then the apprentice, right? Where you
Yes.
have the Mercury and Jupiter
Yeah,
coming through.
absolutely. Ooh, that's cool. I never really thought about it like that before.
That's cool.
I like
I
that a lot.
forgot that Jupiters were also a square. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're like that. It's interesting when you think about those squares because Jupiter has Sagittarius and Pisces, and we won't digress too much on that. But oh, we will though, because Sagittarius and Pisces are where Mercury has its detriment
It's
and fall.
yeah. It's the yeah, it's the other two mutable signs. It's all
Which is
working.
so funny. So it's like when you that highlights some very clear significations for Mercury, I think. The
Hmm.
fact that it does well in air and earth, it has
Hmm.
domicile there. It's dealing with more tangible things. It's dealing with facts, figures. Um,
Hmm.
and that's why it can be that trickster because it can manipulate those things. It can make connections. It can like utilize them to draw up something new and exciting, but at the end of the day can check its
Yeah.
work. Whereas Jupiter's kind of out there just lost in the emotional, visceral sauce.
Yes. The Jupiterian has this flair for going out into
Yeah.
things that are
Mm-hmm.
more meta, and like you're going to be
Yeah.
talking about like, okay, well, how does that feel psychologically? And Mercury's
Yeah.
like, nah.
But I feel like, yes, that is all completely valid. And I'm with you on that. But that's why I love Mercury and Sag and Pisces because then it brings this like swiftness and this like it's so Jupiter in those placements is just going to believe in those
Hmm.
signs. Like the things there are its truth. Mercury is going to take those topics and be like, okay, but why? How
Yeah.
can we connect this?
Hmm.
Where is this coming from? Where's the validity? Like, I want to cite my sources. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It wants to
mm-hmm,
like bring the fact into the metaphysical, right?
yeah,
And be like, okay, but why does it work?
mm-hmm,
Which I feel that.
yeah. Yeah. And I think about tarot too, how and correct me if I'm wrong, but Mercury's card is the magician.
I believe so, but I am less well versed in tarot than you. So,
I will double check real quick, but I'm fairly certain that Mercury's card is the magician, which makes a lot of sense to me.
oh,
It's the guy with he has all of the materials in front of him and he's putting it all together. It's that
mhm.
connection. It's the taking the ingredients and creating something. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of gives you some Virgo
Hmm.
significations, like that Virgo is kind of mixing all the ingredients together to make something, whereas Gemini might be doing it a little bit more in their head.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
Mm-hmm.
think like the mad scientist who just kind of like those people that can just do like all of the math in their head and they just come up with shit versus
Mm-hmm.
the person who's like in there making the stuff and like distilling the things and being really precise about it. That feels like Gemini
Mm-hmm.
versus Virgo to me.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
And
it's Mercury for the magician, so
okay, you did it.
woohoo.
I think like also another pervasive idea that comes through with Mercury is the kind of depth versus breadth thing that we
Mm,
get into with Gemini versus Virgo,
interesting.
where
Yeah.
everybody kind of talks about Gemini being very broad but not very deep. So it's like that jack of all trades kind of vibe, where like you're
Mm,
gonna know how to do, 100 things, but you might not necessarily be the top person in it.
yeah.
Whereas I think that Virgo kind of chooses a smaller number of things to really like dive into and like tunnel down.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like the tunnel down imagery that kind of connects with the underworld imagery that Mercury
Yeah.
pulls in. Yeah, definitely. And when we're talking about the diving deep and the breadth of everything, Mercury is also associated with things like astrology and
Mhm.
things like mystic arts because you have to have so much like learning, curiosity, understanding, and that like kind of openness to a connection with something deeper. And I won't say connection with the underworld, but that's kind of the imagery we're using right now. But
Mhm.
like connection with something more, but beyond. I feel like
Yeah.
that's a very Mercury thing
Mhm.
too that
Yeah.
we
And
kind of forget about.
yeah, because I think sometimes we want to attribute all of that to Jupiter just because it does feel a little bit more esoteric in nature, but there is a lot
Mhm.
of precision that goes into astrology where it's not just, hokey crap.
Exactly.
There's
No,
thousands of
it's
years of
a
research.
and to be an effective astrologer, you have to do a lot of research. You have to
Hmm.
read a lot of books. You have to be curious. You have to try out and like a lot of astrology too, determining your own practice comes back to trying out different things like experimenting.
Yeah.
Experimenting feels very
Yes.
mercurial.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how I always, whenever I'm giving just like quick one word explanations to people that aren't astrologers, I say the experimenter for Gemini. And
Mm,
that's like how I talk about
I
it.
like that. That's really neat. What do you use for Virgo?
Order in the chaos, where it's kind of
Ah,
like
yeah.
there's going to be, because that's the dichotomy of Virgo for me, where it is like obsessed with order and with
Mm-hmm.
things being perfect. But I think, and like robotic kind of comes to mind with Virgo sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always, whenever you talk to the people that have heavy Virgo placements, they have that thing that they're so anal about. And then they have the weird closet, like Monica and Friends, where there is no
Yes.
order and like there is nothing. And like
Yeah.
all of the structure
The
breaks
one
down.
spot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that's definitely a very Virgo thing. I think that comes from Mercury, like that, the idea of um there's like the research and then there's the research is kind of more of the receptive part of like I would say more of like the earthy energy and then there's
Mhm.
with earth energy since we're talking about Virgo there's the research so that's
Yeah.
receptive but then
Mhm.
there's also a material component where it's
Yes.
being put together so I feel like that's where Mercury all of the thoughts and connections that it develops in Gemini it's like and now here is how we will make it a reality
Yeah. Mhm.
and this
Make it
is the way
usable.
I have a list I made
Yes.
a list there's ingredients we're ready.
Yeah. It feels like like the string theorist versus the engineers who like built the shit that the physicists and all of that are coming up with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh, I like that example a lot.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I also love how this conversation has just been like it
Super fast.
feels like very mercurial in just how we're talking and presenting ideas.
Yes, because it's all just kind of connecting with each other
It's
and
like
coming
flowing.
quickly. It's flowing. It's we're exchanging ideas. We're kind of jumping in and out. We're experimenting with new ideas. This is
Mhm.
a very mercurial conversation.
Yes, Mercury is here right now.
Yeah. What is Mercury doing in our chart right now? I'm so curious. I always like to check.
Yeah.
What other Mercury? It's in Libra in the ninth house right now. We
Oh,
love
that's
a ninth house
beautiful.
Mercury. Yeah.
One conversation that Lane and I were having a few days ago is we were
Hmm.
talking about how different people remember different information and how it takes, like people do that in such a different way. And I was looking at
Yes.
our Mercury signs and thinking about like, okay, well, how does that apply? And so
Hmm.
like mine is in Sag, and Sag is all about bringing things together and like making a conglomerate out of different things. Like,
Hmm.
it is the Centaur. So it's like these two things that are totally unrelated, and then you slam them together, and it's like, yeah, that works.
Yes.
So I always take, other shit that I know that totally isn't related to what I'm trying to remember, but for some reason it
It's
like
all.
clicks.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it makes this like stupid, weird connection. And I'm like, okay, it's there for like the next 50 years.
Oh my God. No, that's a great point. That's one thing we didn't touch on is how Mercury does relate to memory.
Mhm.
And where Mercury is sitting in your chart will kind of give you a insight. You know, I don't know if we've said this, but let me just go through real quick. Where Mercury is in your chart can give you insight into how you communicate, how
Mhm.
you process, how you learn, how you connect with others, and how your memory works. Like for me, it's in Cancer conjunct my chart ruler.
Mhm.
So my memory is very physical and emotional. So
Mhm.
I will remember like how I felt or what I was experiencing in a situation. I may not remember what people were wearing or the exact
Yeah.
events that took place. I just kind of remember a conversation was had. It made me feel this way. So then I did this and that. And my day felt like this because of it. I'm a very
Yeah.
feely memory.
No, and that makes total sense based
Hmm.
on your chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where do you feel like the third house element comes in for you? Like, is it just like the day to day or?
Um, so the third house element for me comes more so into how I communicate.
Mhm.
I my education is in music education, which feels so third house Mercury conjunct Venus. Like,
Yes.
and I did it with elementary kids for a long time. So that's literally like the teaching the very basics of music is a very Cancer is a water sign at some, and for me music is an emotional experience.
Yeah.
I've been told I'm good at explaining things in ways that people can understand in layman's terms,
Mhm.
and for giving examples that like people can relate to. So kind of that relational aspect feels very Cancer third housey
Mhm.
for my Mercury.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think that all applies and is very representative.
Yeah, no, it's when you get down to the basics of what each planet and sign really does, which is the whole point of this series, like
Yeah.
it makes so much sense. Like just breaking it down very simply, like Cancer is water, it's emotion. The third house is the things close to you, around you, basic level shit.
Mhm.
Mercury is dispelling and connecting those ideas, and it's conjunct. You can't leave Venus out of it in my chart
Yeah.
because they're conjunct by minutes.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like you should be looking at what is Mercury talking to? Like who is he
Yes.
in conversation with?
Mm-hmm.
And, in my chart, like Mercury's talking to Jupiter and it's ruled by Jupiter. So that's good. And that like it gets a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of help. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it also just like fuels more Jupiter energy into my Mercury.
Yes.
And then with it in the 12th house, the thing that I've noticed, I think this is also kind of a Saturnian thing as well. But Lane tells me that I'm too nonchalant about things,
Huh, that.
where I just like bring stuff up and there's like not a lot of emotion coming through with what I'm saying, but it can be like a really horribly traumatic or like really just very strong topic,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And that also feels like the Sag and the fire Mercury coming in, right? Where you just say the
Mm-hmm.
taboo things that no one else is going to say, but I say it in such a way where it just seems like I'm talking about the weather or something, right? But it's like, no, you're actually talking about something you probably shouldn't talk about in normal
So,
conversation.
the whole shoulda, woulda, coulda is so like like Mercury and Sag doesn't care about shoulda, woulda, coulda. That's a
No.
Saturnian thing. Yeah, so it's like Mercury and Sag doesn't care about the conventions. Whereas if Mercury was in Virgo, it would care about the rules and
Yes.
wanting to stick to it. But Mercury and Sag
Yeah.
is like, what rules? I am just communicating the truth. Thank you very much.
Yes, with my Jupiter, I'm like, the truth is the most important thing. And I don't really care about like the if I should be honest in a situation. It's kind of just like I'm going to be, and everybody hates it.
Me and Austin were just talking last night about I was like, why would I sugarcoat, like why do I have to be nice about some how do I phrase this?
Why
Why
do
do I
you
have
have
to
to
be nice?
why should
No,
you
but it's like
consider someone else's reaction for the truth?
pretty much like
Okay.
why should I sugarcoat something that is just the truth? Like just because people aren't gonna like, oh no, it was more like I challenge people. I'm a challenger. I like to
Okay.
when someone presents something, I challenge it in terms of like you're wrong, but it's like, okay, so how can we move through this? How
Yeah.
can you and people don't necessarily always like that.
Hmm. Yeah, they
Um,
want to be taken at face value.
I have Saturn trine Mercury. So I am looking for solutions.
Yes, which makes sense. And I also have Saturn trying my Mercury.
And I have Mars in Virgo ruled by that Mercury. So for me, it's like when I take action, it's like it has to be informed. It has to have a plan. I have to have like an understanding of the situation in
Hmm.
order to move forward and like create a strategy. Like my Mars is a very strategic Mars because it's in Virgo.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know why I got on that rant. Oh, because we are talking about truth. I
Good.
also have a
Yeah.
Sag Jupiter, so I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes
Truth is important.
truth is I was writing down, my life priorities. And one of the, just trying to get clear on it, because Mars and Virgo wants to know.
Yeah.
And one of them was just like, yeah, truth is like the most important thing to me. That's such a we're kind of straying into Jupiter territory, but I feel like Jupiter is a very relevant planet when we talk about Mercury because
Yeah.
Mercury has so many relationships with Jupiter. So it's kind of
Yeah.
knowing the Jupiter is more about how the way that truth feels, whereas Mercury is more about the facts that play into that truth.
Hmm. I agree.
So,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
that's good. So I guess like to get more
Back and
back into what does
finished up.
Mercury do? Obviously, it inspires thought, conversation, debate, those kind of things. That's kind of what Hannah and I have been illustrating for you guys
Oh,
right
yeah.
here. There will be tangents. There will be a lot of high energy. Uh,
Yes.
Also, like whenever I was reading some stuff from the Sphere and Sundry, they just released an exalted Mercury
Oh,
materia, and my gosh, do I want some? But oh my gosh, inflation.
big recommend, but also big
So,
feel that.
anyways, but in that write-up, Caitlin Kopic had mentioned that Mercury increases your want for sweets and sugar.
Ooh,
And I just
interesting.
think that's fun and cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was all. That
I
was the
like that
thought.
too. That was the Why do you think that is? Because maybe because of the energy that can come from the sweetness
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the stimulation almost in a way.
Mhm. I think it's like the stimulation. Sugar is the easiest thing in your body to metabolize. It is the
Mm,
purest form of energy. It's going to go straight to source. And granted, okay, let me just say, all of the crap that's in your food, it's not
it's
good for
not
you.
sugar. Yeah,
It
it's
is not
not.
sugar.
It's
Brown
not.
rice syrup is sugar. Okay, they're lying to you. There are 250 labels that you can have, 250 different names for sugar on these labels.
Cheese.
Get curious, look it up. Okay.
Get mercurial about it, folks.
Yes. But fruit sugar is really good for you and
Yes.
it's easy for your body to process. Your brain loves it.
Yes. We love
Good.
it.
Yes. So I think like the brain food kind of idea, like if you were to
Ooh,
eat
yeah.
fruit, it's really good brain food.
Hell yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I guess the last, do you have any final kind of like wrap ups for things
No,
that
I
Mercury does?
didn't mean to yell at everybody about sugar, but I'm passionate about
It's
this.
fine. We're talking about Jupiter and truth and sugar,
Yes.
the way we feel. Um, the last kind of thought I had about Mercury is we know there's been a debate going around about whether cats are solar or Saturnian.
Yes.
In our opinion,
They're
they are
mercurial.
mercurial. Ever heard Curiosity Killed the Cat? Curiosity
Yeah.
is literally the Mercury thing.
Hmm.
I think cats are very they do have that trickster energy. They
Hmm.
are this one loves
Yeah.
to just play around and just play hide and seek with us, but he also has
Yes.
he's a Virgo, so that's super Mercury. Um but very fastidious about their routine and appearance. I feel like paying attention it kind of gives
Mhm.
that Virgo side of that energy.
Yeah, they clean themselves like all day.
And I see that as an argument for Saturnian, but then at the same
Mhm.
time, it's like it's a process that they've
Honed.
finessed. Yeah, that feels very.
Cats have the
mercurial.
most sensitive stomachs out of any animal. They're the most likely to, well, I say that. I don't know. I haven't done research on that, but I'm just like thinking based on like cat versus dog,
Oh
like
yeah.
whatever pet you're going to have in your home.
Yeah.
Cats are infinitely pickier. There's more plants that are going to take them out, and they're going to try to eat all of those plants because they're little, I don't know. Mishka tried
Yeah.
to eat my hydrangea the other night, and I'm like,
Chaotic.
no, it's going to kill you.
Chaotic. They're chaotic. And I feel like Mercury's a little chaotic too.
Yes. And I
Uh,
think like they transition from the states of like happy to pissed off so fast. And like that
oh
kind of like
yeah.
transitionary speed.
Mutable.
Yeah, very
Hmm.
mutable.
Yeah,
It's
cats are
just like
very
cats.
like you have my dad always calls his dog like a cat because he always wants to be in and then out and in and out and
Hmm.
then in and then out. He can't make up his mind, and that feels like a cat thing. Like they're just
Yeah.
like, I'm going over here now because I feel like it. I'm doing this now because I feel like it. I'm doing this. They will never do something they don't want.
Yep. Yep. And they really though, the curiosity too, to loop back.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Is there
Any
anything?
I think we did pretty damn good. I think
I think
we're
so.
this one flowed.
This one flowed. I guess
Mhm.
just if you guys are curious about looking at your own chart, then the way that I would go about it, and I think I speak for Hannah too in this process, is like first look at like what sign your Mercury's in,
Mhm.
then kind of think about like she was talking about the element first, and like think about the qualities of that, and like
Mhm.
what does that give you, and then go into like maybe the modality
Yep.
and kind of like, okay, like what part in the process are you working through and like where are you going to be at in your work, right? So like the
Yeah.
mutable is like wrapping up a project, cardinal
Mhm.
starting one, fixed is
Mhm.
continuing, and then
Mhm.
layer on the house. And that'll be like, where is the speed? Where is your mind kind of located most of the time? And
Yeah.
then what is it talking to?
Yeah.
What does
Yeah.
that
Well,
tell you?
who's part of the conversation? Who's getting their opinion in? Who's not?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Mercury not talking to? That's almost
Yeah.
more
Yeah. Who
important.
is he
Yeah.
just like, yeah. I
There is
think the
no
last
information flow.
exactly. I think the last little tidbit I'll slide in here is Mercury is the one planet that um doesn't receive a traditional gender signification. Like a
Mhm,
lot of the other planets are ascribed either masculine or feminine, whether that's related to strict gender or not, but
mhm.
Mercury is a very non-binary, flowy, goes right. I mean, we've been talking about mutable nature the whole time, but it's a very flowy, mutable, non-binary kind of
Yeah.
energy, which is
Mhm.
cool to have that representation just baked right in.
Yeah. I mean, it is the liminal space. So like
Exactly.
liminal with everything, you know?
Yep, with everything. Liminal is a really, I would say, one of the best words to describe Mercury.
Mhm. I like psychopomp too.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, quick thing, just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm thinking about it. So,
Mm-hmm.
with the Mercury retrograde cycles, it's likely to
Mm.
be retrograde the most often out of all the planets just because it
Mm-hmm.
moves the fastest. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get as far away from the sun as any of the other planets. So, whenever you are having that retrograde cycle, try to start thinking about it in a way of like your Mercury's coming back and it's coming to back to think about the underworld and going back down into the depths of your brain and where your mind's at. So don't have this kind of like, oh shit, it's just getting fucked up. Think about it in a
Yeah.
constructive way where it's like, okay, I can go deep into my brain probably right now more than I could typically. And
Mm-hmm.
what does that have to say for me and like what I'm going through right now?
Yeah, that's really good. I like that a
Thanks.
lot. All
12th house
right.
Mercury, I live there.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up today for what Mercury even does. I think we did that pretty solid. Um, you guys
And
can find go ahead.
we're gonna do the more in-depth archetypal
Oh
episodes.
yeah.
So
We're gonna go into the
yeah.
different archetypes that Mercury shows up in different cultures and TV shows and books and stuff. So to give you a little bit more of a grounded and um contextual
Hmm.
example and understanding of Mercury. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, y'all can always find us at Primordial Threads on Twitter, Spotify, YouTube. We have a bunch of them now. Um,
Yes, Anchor, Apple,
Apple
and
Music, Amazon,
Amazon.
few places. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, ugh,
We're everywhere.
we're everywhere. But then where can they find us?
They can find me at Sappy Saturnian on Twitter. I opened a website, so now I have open consults. If you guys want, I have a few options.
Yes.
Go check it out. It's
Book with
Sappy,
Hannah.
Sappy Saturnian Consults, Squarespace. Go to my Twitter, you'll find it.
Yeah, we'll link it in the show notes too, so you guys
Yeah.
can check it out. And you can find me at Aluna Astrology on Twitter and Instagram. I do not have my books open right now, but that's okay because this I like chatting with you guys. So
They might
go
be
book with
soon.
Hannah.
So,
We'll see.
give Hannah enough emails and then she might open them.
We'll see, guys.
I don't know. She never reads them. So I
Listen, I read the important ones. Just because there's 1,000 in there doesn't mean that they're important.
I'm so sorry. I
They're
just
just
called you out.
there. We've talked about this. All right, y'all. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.